My God, this is powerful. I've got to close my eyes for this one. A network of secret societies operating globally, fiercely compartmentalized, so most of the people in the secret societies don't know what they're part of, running the world behind the apparent people that were running the world, like presidents and prime ministers and politicians. The Knights of Malta, the Knights Templar, the inner core of the Jesuit order, Opus Dei, and the Skull and Bones Society in the United States that's produced so many presidents and people with political power, etc.
Skull and Bones, the secret society.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go
I'm
on.
sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the rest.
Number 322.
You both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us?
Not much, because it's a secret.
Human society is manipulated from the unseen, from a force from the unseen. From the moment of that third meeting, my life transformed. Became this synchronistic journey of documents, people, books, personal experiences that were like handing me puzzle pieces. The way I've worked all these years is to know that whatever I know or think I know, there's always more to know. I was born in Leicester in the East Midlands, not far from where you are. And I wanted to be a professional footballer when I was a kid, and I eventually was signed by Coventry City. And I thought, that was going to be my future. And then about 6 months after I joined Coventry, maybe a little bit more, my left knee swelled up for no reason, and everybody seemed very bewildered by why it would. And over the next few years, till I was forced to stop playing professionally at 21, just 21, only just, it was picking off other joints. And, to do this job amid all the abuse and ridicule over the last 36 years now, you need to have a bit of a backbone, and you need to have a bit of determination that you're not going to give up no matter what. And that was kind of triggered by what happened in the end with the arthritis, because I was told at Coventry City when I was 19 that I should never play football again because I had this arthritis. And I then thought my career was over, but I got asked to play for another club called Hereford United. And I went to play for them for 2 years. And in that period, Hereford United, who were just one step out, one league out of the main leagues, got into the main leagues. And I played pretty much a whole season as a professional when I was 19, 20, more like 20, in the Football League, which had been my kind of dream all along, to play in the Professional Football League. But the arthritis was still there. And I went through a period, pretty much the whole season. The club didn't know because I weren't going to tell them, were I? But I was in agony every warm up for every training session. So I would get up in the morning, and I would know that in about an hour and a half, 2 hours, I was going to be in agony for about half an hour, 40 minutes. And I became like the club hypochondriac because I was making different excuses every morning for why I was limping during the warm-up and stuff. It was, I've got a bit of a pull or whatever. I've got a bit of a blister. But it was always the same thing, of course. And And once the joints were warmed up, I could train okay. So, and the funny thing was, you talk about create your own reality. But when I played the games, about, 50, 60 games that season, I didn't have the pain. Um, it was like, what? But I didn't. And we were really, really successful. And we finished the season getting promotion to the next league up. And I was only just 21 at the end of the season. And I thought, well, this is the way my life's going to go now, because towards the end of that season, in the spring, the last few months of the season, suddenly the pain disappeared, and I was able to warm up and train without pain. And I thought, Icke, you've cracked this, son. And then just after the season ended, I woke up one morning. My wife, Linda, then was by my side. And I realized I couldn't breathe. And I realized I couldn't move my body in any way, shape, or form. And so I'm lying there. I thought I was going to die because it seemed forever. It wasn't, obviously, or I would have done. But I'm lying there and I can't move my body and I can't breathe. And I'm trying to bang my wife to wake her up, and I can't move. And then I gasped a breath eventually, fortunately. And then almost felt like, anyway, every joint in my body was agony, like someone sticking a knife in it. So I went to bed that night, or the night before, a professional footballer, and I woke up never to play again. And, my life then took a completely different direction, which eventually led to what I've been doing for 36 years.
By all appearances, you were set to have a successful career in the world of sports TV, but things started to change for you, as you said, and you began to explore alternative medicine and worldviews in the 80s. And if I remember correctly, it was around this time that you met the psychic and spiritual healer Betty Shine, who seems to have been a pretty significant catalyst for you at that point.
Well, she was a catalyst because what happened is, when I was a kid growing up, I'd always rejected the religious version of life. And I also rejected the orthodox scientific version of life, that somehow we're a cosmic accident. And I didn't buy the idea that we were, subject to some judgmental God who send us to the fires of hell or heaven, depending on how we behaved in one single life on earth. I mean, I didn't buy any of that. But I didn't really start looking around. Okay, so what's the alternative to who we are, what reality is? Because I was trying to be a professional footballer, and I was only a kid anyway. And then I started to when my football career finished, my second string when I was a kid, what in terms of interest, was always journalism. I was always reading newspapers. Well, you wouldn't think a kid would, but I was. And so when my career ended when I was just 21, and they said to me, actually at the time, you could be in a wheelchair in your 30s because, this is going to progress. And I said to them, no, I'm bloody not, mate. And they gave me a kind of a jar of pills. I think it was called Indicid. They gave me. I wouldn't be alive now if I'd taken them for any length of time. And I said to them, well, will this get rid of the arthritis? They said, oh no, it'll just take the pain away. I said, well, you can stick them then. I'm not interested in that. What's that going to do to my body? So anyway, I became a journalist eventually on a very small paper, and then worked my way up through newspapers, radio, and then television. But by the kind of time the 80s came along, I was starting to, I was a television presenter on the national BBC network. And you think, okay, well, lots of people would want that. And the funny thing was, when my football career ended, I was asked onto a television show. What do they call it? Central Television. I think it was called ATV in those days. And I was interviewed, about the end of my career. And I looked around this studio. It was live, and I'm waiting to go on, and somebody's reading the news and all that stuff. And I thought, Icke, son, this is for you, mate. Yeah, I'll have some of this. So that was an immediate. This always happened with me. So as soon as something's ended, there's an immediate kind of door opening. Go for this. And I worked my way up through to eventually become a television presenter on the national network. But by the time I was getting to into the later 80s, it didn't have the same pull to me, and I was getting very tired of the whole arena, really. And then I became a national spokesman for the British Green Party for a short time, when we had a tremendous election success, the first one the party's ever had in the European elections towards the end of the 1980s. But something had started to happen to me by then. In early 1989, when all this success in the Green Party was starting to happen, when I was in a room alone, it was like I wasn't alone. It was like there was a presence there. And I'd never been into any of this stuff before. I was just getting on with my life, trying to build various careers. But it became more and more tangible through 1989. And there came a point in early 1990, I'd just done a program for the BBC, and I was staying overnight at a hotel just down from their television centre in London, called the Kensington Hilton. Actually, it's still there. And I'm sitting on the bed in this empty room, just me, and this presence was so intense that I said out into the room, if there's something there, would you please contact me, because you're driving me up the bloody wall. I mean, this has been going on for a year now. And then a little while after that, days after that, I'm with my son, Gareth, who's now a big strapping guy, working in the same arena now. But he was a little boy then. And we were going to have some lunch down on a seafront cafe on the Isle of Wight where I lived. And somebody came up to me. There was a big football match that day. And somebody came up to me, a railway worker, and started talking to me about football and how do you think the so-and-so will get on. And when we'd finished talking, I realised Gareth wasn't there anymore, but I knew where he would be. He would be in the newsagent's shop on the seafront. Having looking at the steam train books, because we like steam train books and steam trains. So I walk into the shop, it's still there, and there he is looking at a steam train book. And I said to him, "Come on, Gaz, we'll go up into the town and get some lunch." At which point, the atmosphere around me changed. I now would say the electromagnetic field around me changed. There was like the atmosphere completely different, and it was like two magnets were pulling my feet down to the floor. And it wasn't a voice, but it was a very strong kind of thought form that passed through my mind, which said, "Go and look at the books on the far side." Now, first of all, what is going on, and secondly, I knew that newsagent very well. I used to go in there often. And the books that it sold were romantic novels and stuff for the tourists in the deck chairs on the beach. And so I thought, well, what's the point of that? But anyway, I went I started walking in this daze, what the hell's happening, towards these books. And in among the romantic novels was just one that was different. And it had a woman's face on the front. And I picked it up. It was called Mind to Mind by a lady you mentioned called Betty Shine, a professional psychic lady. And I've never been to a psychic before. And I turned it over to look at the blurb. And I saw the word psychic. And immediately I thought, I wonder if this woman could pick up what's been happening to me for the last year. So I read it in 24 hours and I contacted her, went to see her. I went to see her 4 times over 4 weeks. And the first 2 times, she also did the kind of hands-on healing and the Reiki stuff. And I said to her, as an excuse, because I wasn't going to tell her what was happening to me and, let her into, being told what she was going to tell me. I said, look, I've got arthritis. I wonder if your hands-on healing might help. That's why I went, as she thought. So I went a couple of times and we had a nice chat about different things, reality and all that stuff. The 3rd and 4th time changed my life. The 3rd time I went, I'm sitting on her medical type bench, actually in her front room, and she's doing the hands-on healing over my left knee. And I felt suddenly like a spider's web was on my face, which I also know now is an electromagnetic field. But at the time, I'm thinking, I read this in her book. And she said that when other realities, other entities, whatever you want to call them, are trying to lock into you, you often feel like a spider's web on your face. So I said nothing to her. She's doing my left knee, like. I said nothing to her. And then she suddenly, no more than 10 or 15 seconds later, launched her head back and said, my God, this is powerful. I've got to close my eyes for this one. And then she proceeded to tell me that a figure in her mind was telling her to pass on to me the fact that I was going to go out on a world stage and reveal great secrets, that it had all been arranged and organized a long time ago in perception of time. And that one man cannot change the world, but one man can communicate the message that can change the world. That was one thing that came through. And that they were going to lead me to knowledge, and at other times they would put knowledge directly into my mind, and I would think, where did that come from? And from the moment I went a week later and there was more stuff, but from the moment of that 3rd meeting, my life transformed, became this synchronistic journey of walking into documents, people, books, personal experiences that were like handing me puzzle pieces in this tapestry that I've been putting together all these years. And the first couple of years, I would be led to knowledge, if you like. It synchronistically it would, appear. And I would then conclude what was happening as a result of the knowledge. And then after about 2 years, it flipped, and it's gone on ever since like this. And that is that I would know what the situation was at first, and then the names, dates, places, tangible confirmation would come as on the back of that. And that's gone on ever since. And the journey has, first of all, in the early 1990s, and the BBC, by the way, in this same period, decided they were going to dispense with my services. They thought a sports presenter who was saying that so-and-so scored the winning goal today, it was not compatible with being in the Green Party and a national spokesman, so they got rid of me. But what that did, and all part of the synchronicity, was to clear me, because I've always lived well below my my income. I've always thought I'd rather not, live on the edge of what's coming in. And so I had a bit of a nest egg. It weren't much, but a bit, that I could suddenly give this my total attention for at least for 6 months or so. And I did. And in the early days, the first, maybe the early 90s, because this happened in 1990, all the information, the synchronicity, if you like, was pointing to the fact that there was a network, which I now call the global cult, a network of secret societies operating globally, fiercely compartmentalized, so most of the people in the secret societies don't know what they're part of, that was actually running the world behind the apparent people that were running the world, like presidents and prime ministers and politicians. And so I was putting all that together. And then from about 1996, 95, 96, the synchronicity of the information changed to the fact that behind the global cult of apparent humans was a non-human force that this cult was actually serving. And this eventually took me to America in 1996. And in a 12-day period, a 15-day period, 15-day period, 12 different people in different cities, because I was traveling around talking actually to nobody at the time, told me about they'd had the same experience of seeing someone apparently human change into a reptilian form and then back again. And the way I've worked all these years is to know that whatever I know or think I know, there's always more to know. I mean, if you can think of one thing that is unquestionable, that cannot be challenged, it's that. Whatever we know, there's always more to know. And so instead of just dismissing what appears to be, crazy, and of course I was the first one to go, what? You put it on the back burner and you let it simmer and you see what else comes. Okay, what more information is going to come, if any, on this same subject in this same area? And it did. And eventually it reached the point where it crossed my line. I thought, well, I've got so much information from so many people who are unconnected to each other that I'm going to go with this. And I wrote a book called The Biggest Secret, which came out in 1998, in which I introduced the whole reptilian thing for the first time. But it went on. It's like when you keep realizing that whatever you know, there's always more to know, that's always drives you deeper and deeper in the rabbit hole, because you're not stopping and saying, oh, I got it now. And one of the frustrating things, Jay, is that for me is to watch. When I started out, there was no alternative media. It didn't exist. It was just a few individuals, unconnected, trying to get out what they, whatever they could. Very difficult in those days, because there was the internet was fledgling, and if you were doing an event, you stood in the street and handed out leaflets. That's how it started out. Anyway, what's frustrating is that so much of the alternative media has awakened from the myopia to the fact that there is some kind of conspiracy, but they stop. They think, I've got it now. And if they are of a religious persuasion, which many people in the alternative media are, especially in America, then that is also a prison wall you won't go beyond. So you just eventually become like an eddy in a river, going round and round and round, saying the same thing. My approach is, okay, so I think I got this. This seems to be how this is. What don't I know? And it drives you deeper and deeper in the rabbit hole. And the synchronicity of my life went on and on and on.
Hmm.
And
Well, something that happened, I just want to just cut in real quick just to ask about something that happened in the early 90s, because if I remember correctly, you went off to Peru and had quite a profound experience at a site which is actually of particular interest to me. I recently came back from Peru myself, and you visited what are known as the Silestani burial grounds, the incredibly precise megalithic towers across the Puno area, and you had a profound experience there, right?
yeah, this was after my career ended. My television career ended. This one. I've had a few careers and a few endings of, and I went into that period where I thought I'm gonna give this my full focus and see what happens, because something was saying, go for this, go for this. You've got to go for this. And I wrote a book called Truth Vibrations, which was the first book I wrote on these subjects, where I'm, I'm trying to I'm trying to get my head around what the hell is happening to me, to be honest. So that went to off to be to the publisher um, towards the end of 1990, and then I suddenly had this kind of, not obsession, but this synchronicity was pointing me to Peru. Like, if I was walking down the street and past a travel agent, there'd be a display for Peru and Machu Picchu and all these things. And I actually, this reached a point where in February 1991, I headed out to Peru, not knowing really why, but I just felt I gotta go, I gotta go. And anyway, I write in my books what happened. It was just amazing things started to unfold when I was there, but it ended up with me, as you say, in this Siustani area, about 25 minutes in a car from Puno on Lake Titicaca. And what happened is I picked up, again, totally synchronistically, this Peruvian guide in Cuzco in the Andes, and he went with me all around Peru as a kind of a guide, and he booked us into this hotel in Puno, and it was called the Siustani Hotel. And so all over the hotel are pictures of this site, this ancient Inca site. I think it goes back further, and so I'm looking at these pictures, and I said to him, I want to go there. He said, "Oh, it's not possible," because it was February. He said, "Oh, it's not possible." I said, "Look, I got to go there, right?" He said, "Well, it will cost you." I think they were the few times he said that, and so I hired one of these kind of taxi vans, like minibus things, to go to Siustani, and I went out there. And when I got there, it's beautiful. I went back a long time later, and it's much more built up than it was then. But I walked around it, and it was beautiful with the lake and the mountains and in the distance, and it was fabulous. But the power of I've got to go there, I've got to go there, didn't match my experience. It was lovely, but it didn't match that. So I got back into the van, the kind of minibus thing. There's me and there's the driver and the guide, and we're going down the road away from it, and I'm just sort of daydreaming. I do that all the time. Daydreaming. People say, "Do you meditate?" No. Every time I meditate, I fall asleep, mate. But I do daydream. I daydream a lot, much of the time. And so I'm daydreaming, looking out the window, and I'm looking at this kind of hill, on the right, and all I could hear in my head when I was looking at it was, "Come to me, come to me, come to me." So I said to the guy, first of all, you go, "Look, mate, you used to be presenting the sport. What the hell has happened to you?
Well, as Mike said, we now have a film on Coventry City.
Hill's talking to you." So I said to the driver and the guy, "Can you just stop? Because I need to go up that hill." I said, "I'll only be a few minutes." Well, I was about an hour. So I went up there, and it was like, it had a view back across Sea Ustani, and there was all stones and what have you there. And it was like what happened in the newsagent shop when this all started, but massively more powerful and profound. First of all, I felt the energy change around me again when I was looking out across Sea Ustani. And then I felt like a drill going in the top of my head, going through, and another one coming back the other way, a two-way flow of energy. And then I think, before it started, I had that thought form go through my head again. And it said, "It will be over when you feel the rain." It said that they will be talking about this 100 years from now. It will be over when you feel the rain. That's what it said. And then my arms went out at 45 degrees like that. And I made no decision to do that. And then this energy got more and more and more powerful. And my arms are like that. And it was about at least 45 minutes. And I didn't feel a thing. When it was over, agony. But anyway, I'm thinking, when I got this thought form, "It will be over when you feel the rain," I thought, "What are you talking about?" Clear, bright blue Peruvian sky, not a cloud to be seen. So this energy is getting more and more powerful, and I'm like plugged into the mains. And I was going like in and out of consciousness, like when you're driving a car and you can't remember the last 2 miles, your subconscious has been driving it. It was like that. And one of the times I came back to conscious mind, I saw a light grey mist over the distant mountains. And I thought, it's raining. And then that got darker and darker. And this storm came out of those mountains towards me. It was a long way away to start with. And it all happened, ridiculously fast. And, if I describe this or I put this in a movie, they'd say, "Oh, come on, man. You're talking about, it's impossible." It happened. This storm is coming towards me. And where weathermen talk about, the front's coming over, it was a front. It was a straight line of absolutely stair rod rain. And by this time, I'm hanging on for dear life with this energy. And I watched this wall of water come towards me, and then it hit me. I was drenched immediately, and everything then stopped. And my legs are like Bambi. I can hardly stand now, and my shoulders, woo. And so I remember I'd been to. Just before I went to Peru, I'd been to Glastonbury, this center of a new age and crystals and all that stuff. And I walked into this crystal shop because I have to watch the pennies here now because I ain't got a job. So I walk into this crystal shop just out of interest to have a look around. I was the only one in there, and the guy behind the counter who owned it, he walks out. He picks up this massive quartz crystal, and he gives it to me. He says, "I think you'll need that. You're going to need that." And I said, "Oh, sorry, mate." I said, "I can't afford that." He said, No, take it, have it." And I took that with me to Peru, and I went. It was in my bag, and I went down back to the bus thing, the minibus, because. Energy is still pouring out of my hands, pouring out of my feet. And I tried to take the energy out into this crystal because it was, very powerful. And my feet were still vibrating with this energy. I couldn't sleep that night because of it. And things changed after that. I came back to Britain and not knowing what the hell was happening to me. And it was like what happened over the next 3 months was like I've described it as when you press too many keys on the computer too fast, the computer freezes, right? So yeah, and it was like when I look back on it, it was like someone had come along, and you're in a bubble of reality, you're in a bubble of perception, and someone comes along and pops it with a pin, and suddenly everything beyond it starts to pour into your mind, your conscious mind, your subconscious mind, and you can't process it. It was just so much information, and it was pressing too many keys on the computer, and it froze, and I didn't know who I was or where I was for 3 months. And in the middle of it, infamously, I went on a massive audience live chat show called The Wogan Show.
According to his book, The Truth Vibrations, the world as we know it is about to end. David Icke.
In early 1991, and was ridiculed, laughed at by the audience immediately.
You know, the best way of removing negativity is to laugh and be joyous. So I'm delighted that there's so much laughter in the audience tonight.
But no, it's
But just let me say this.
They're laughing at you. They're not laughing with you.
Fine.
Ridiculed massively, and from that moment, for a very, very long time, I couldn't walk down any street in Britain without being laughed at, pointed out, and ridiculed. I mean everywhere. My kids got the same at school, and it was a horror story. But what it did was clean me out of something that has been absolutely essential ever since, and that's to lose the fear of what other people think. And so when you are subject to that historic level of ridicule, you either disappear from society and hide away, or you become immensely strong because you no longer care what other people think, and it's a freedom that cannot be described if you haven't experienced it. And after about 3 months, the computer unfroze, and suddenly I'm the David of old again, but I wasn't. People were coming up to me and who knew me, and they were saying, "Oh, thought you'd gone mad, Dave. You're the same bloke I've always known." And I appeared to be outwardly, but I wasn't. I was seeing the world in a completely different way, although I seemed to be the same bloke I am now, really. So that was a massive point on the road for me on so many levels, and like I say, after from 1996, when I started to realize there was a non-human dimension to all this, it went on to lead me to the fact that this is some kind of simulation, and I've gone on ever since, and it's a simulation that has been generated by this non-human force specifically to hijack humanity's sense of perception, sense of reality.
Well, let's jump into that. So you've described the apex of the cabal or the global cult as essentially a genetically modified human Archon hybrid race of reptilian shapeshifters, the Babylonian Brotherhood, the Illuminati or elite that manipulate global events. Can you unpack that in more detail for people who don't know what things like Archon mean, and how, in your opinion, do these hybrid bloodlines maintain their power through modern institutions like the UN and global banking? Can you lay this out for people?
Yeah, well, let's do it in.
I know it's a lot to unpack.
Let's do it in
30 years.
Let's do it in levels, going out from the human realm. What people who haven't come across my stuff need to appreciate is that I've been researching this full time for 36 years. I've been to, must be over 60 countries till I started getting banned from loads of them. 30 European countries and Australia currently, for the crime of challenging conventional belief. Anyway, in the early 90s, let's go through it in the way that it came to me. So in the early 1990s, it was all about, the synchronicity of my life was all about this global cult, this network of secret societies. So let's start with that. And within the human realm, the human dimension, which is tiny actually, just a band of frequency, there is this network of secret societies. Now, if people could vision or visualize a spider's web around the planet, it's a good way of explaining it. And each of the strands in the web is a secret society or a semi-secret group, or it's in the realm of the scene, it's a government or government agency or corporation or Silicon Valley or World Health Organization. And in the middle of this, this web is the spider. And the spider is not in this dimension of reality. What I call the spider is in another dimension of reality, which is known as the astral dimension, which interpenetrates this one. See, one of the real challenging things to get this stuff across is to break through people's, I say, programmed sense of reality. And I've said many times that at the earliest time that a child can grasp this, they should be told that when they look through their eyes, they're not seeing everything in the space they're looking at. They're looking at a tiny band of frequency called visible light by scientists, which is the only band of frequency that we can see. And yet, all the other frequency bands of realities and of infinity actually exist in the same space that I'm sitting in now. But we can't see them because this, what I call biological computer, is programmed to decode visually only that tiny band of frequency. I don't think that's an accident, by the way. And so people talk about seeing a UFO appear out of nowhere, or seeing an entity appear out of nowhere at the end of the bed and then disappear into nowhere. But what you have with the programmed sense of normal is the immediate reaction that that's not possible. Orthodox science, which is just another religion, would say the same. That's not possible. But it is. It's absolutely possible. Because what happens is the craft, or the entity, whatever, enters visible light, this tiny band of frequency that we can see. And when it enters to the observer, it's come out of nowhere, because it's just entered your field of vision. And then when it leaves, just changes its frequency, it seems to disappear into nowhere. So first of all, you know, when people talk about heaven or whatever, God, they look up, don't they? Oh, it's heaven. But it's not like that. You know, reality is not made up of chest of drawers, one on top of the other. They interpenetrate the same space, just like radio stations and television stations that share the same space but don't interfere with each other unless they're very, very close on the dial. You know, if you've got a radio and you tune it to radio A, you get radio A. If you move the dial and you tune it to radio B, you get radio B. But radio A doesn't cease to broadcast just because you've gone to radio B. It continues to broadcast. It's that your set's no longer picking it up. It's no longer in tune with it. And so infinity exists in the same space that I'm sitting in now, and you're sitting in, and everyone's sitting in. But we can only pick up this visible light frequency in terms of what we can see. And so you have this other dimension where these entities operate from that is being served in its agenda for humanity by this global cult. So the spider, the center of the web, is in another dimension of reality, very close to this one, by the way, but beyond visible light. And so then you look at the strands immediately around the spider within the human realm of the cult, and they are the most exclusive secret societies. They will know pretty much the big picture of what's going on. And those people don't put themselves on public display. If you can see one of these cultists in the public arena, like your Gateses and your Swabs and all these people, then they're gophers. They might be rich gophers, but they're gophers. They're serving. They're not the origin. And so you come then out from those exclusive secret societies deep in the shadow.
Are these societies that we have names for? Like, you know, is it Priory of Sion, or are these unknown elements still to us?
The point of those is interesting to me over the years. The point of those societies, those secret societies that are really exclusive and have relatively few people in them, a lot of them don't have names. Because you try to track something that doesn't have a name. It's not easy. But then you're coming out from them, and then you hit the ones that do have names. You hit the Knights of Malta, the Knights Templar, the inner core of the Jesuit order, Opus Dei, and so on, and the Skull and Bones Society in the United States that's produced so many presidents and power, people with political power, etc.
Skull and Bones, the secret society.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go
I'm
wild.
sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the web.
Number 322.
You both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us?
Not much, because it's a secret.
Is there a secret handshake? Is there a secret code?
I wish there were something secret I could manifest.
322, secret number?
There are all kinds of secrets.
These secret societies at that level are fiercely compartmentalized, like I say. So if you get the Freemasons, people say it's the Freemasons. It's not. It's the inner core of the Freemasons. That's what it is. All these secret societies are broken up, like the Freemasons, into levels of degree. And what's that? Degree of knowledge. Most Freemasons in the world, in the 33 degrees of the Scottish Rite, are in the bottom three levels of degree, the so-called blue degrees. That's all that as far as they get.
Oh yeah, I don't think there's any world domination happening at the local lodge just down the road from me.
But people think that's what you're saying. That's the thing.
Exactly.
I know Freemasons. They're not trying to run the world. No, they're not. Bill and Joe down the lodge. No, they're not. They might think, oh, yeah, we get a good deal with the local planning guy who's also in the lodge or whatever. But they're not trying to run the world. And the Freemasons at that level have been described as like a show army to actually hide what's going on behind it. And, over the years, I remember back in the 1990s, I talked to Freemasons, high Freemasons, and read books by Freemasons who'd left the so-called craft and wanted to expose it. And they were getting to the 33rd degree of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. They're apparent at top level. And they were still kept in the dark of what's actually happening. Because when you get to the top of these secret societies like the Freemasons, there's another level above them, and you only get into that if you are seriously in the game, in the club, and willing to serve it without question. So all these secret societies work like this, but you get the more exclusive ones, and you know the range of people who will know the bigger picture will be more than you'll get in a massive secret society network like the Freemasons. So the idea is the agenda for humanity from the spider comes out through these secret societies. And eventually it hits a point in this web that I call the cusp. And that is where you'll find the World Economic Forum, the Bilderberg Group, the Council on Foreign Relations, the United Nations inner core. If you want to do a modicum of research, you can find that they exist, like, for instance, the Club of Rome. The Club of Rome was created in 1968 specifically to exploit and invent environmental concerns to justify the centralization of power. And also at this cusp level, you have this vast number of NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and think tanks. And again, they're fiercely compartmentalized. Only a few people will know what they're there for. But the role of the cusp organizations is to, and the World Economic Forum is a classic, is to take the agenda coming from the spider, from the hidden secret society network, and to play it out into the public arena as government policy and the direction of the world. And so when you get out into the world of the scene and you're looking at left-wing parties and right-wing parties, this network, this cult, is controlling ultimately both of them, and the center come to that. It's controlling them either directly in terms of some individuals, and it's controlling them through perceptual manipulation, or this is what we should do, and it's controlling them through, if necessary, blackmail. This is what the Epstein network was all about, and you have these organizations like, say, Silicon Valley and the World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization, and so on, the World Bank, IMF, European Union. They are, again, massively compartmentalized. But if you go deep enough into them, like most people in the World Health Organization, they turn up, they do their job, and they go home. And they do their job on the basis of what people above them tell them their job is and how they should do it. So it's a very small number comparatively with the employees of the World Health Organization that actually are connected to this cult. But that's all you need as long as they're in the positions of power.
Mention now names like Mrs. Merkel, even Vladimir Putin and so on. They all have been young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. Mm-hmm. But what we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina, and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more, half of this cabinet are actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
And so if you go deep enough in these organizations, governments, government agencies, and World Health Organization, whatever, Silicon Valley corporations, you meet that level of the organization that attaches to the cult. And at that level attaches to the web of this cult. And at that level, they're all on the same team and they're all working to the same end. And the vast majority of people, even within those organizations, have no idea that that's the case. And so if you look back at COVID, you had the World Health Organization, which was created by the Rockefellers with Rothschild input in 1948, with the goal of controlling global health policy from a central point, which they're, well on the way to achieving. They certainly did during COVID. And so they, through the World Health Organization, which is run basically by Bill Gates on behalf of the Rockefellers. There's a massive connection going way back between the Rockefellers and the Gates family. And this totally corrupt Ethiopian bloke, Tedros, who's the apparent head of the World Health Organization. And they put out how the world in the different countries should respond to COVID. And most of the countries did what the World Health Organization said. But where I'm going with this is that the Silicon Valley corporations, the social media corporations, they said right at the start of all this that they were going to censor those that were challenging the World Health Organization version of COVID and all the regulations. Well, I mean, April 2020, I was off every social media platform, gone, all of them, when I was calling out the hoax. And
I made a YouTube channel just to test the waters on like specifically COVID related research, and I think in 2 weeks it was taken down. Like nothing could survive that period, big or small.
So what you do, if you're not aware of this web, Jay, what you do is you look at that situation and you go, what's going on? These corporations are supposed to be the town square, as they say in America. They're supposed to be where we have debate and different opinion. What's going on? Well, they're just censoring everybody. But when you realize that about the web, the fact that COVID was an agenda of the web, you then see what was happening. The World Health Organization, go deep enough, attaches to the web. The Silicon Valley corporations go deep enough, they attach to the web. And so what you've had was the web censoring any challenge to the web's World Health Organization. You had the big pharma corporations like Pfizer and Moderna and these people. They were going to the government agencies that were supposed to protect the public from big pharma. I think MHRA in Britain and the CDC and the FDA in America. And they were asking for permission to give this fake, not a vaccine under previous criteria, to younger and younger people, right down to babies. And they were getting it. And I'm looking on. I mean, because I understood the web, I could see why it was happening. But if you didn't, you'd look at it and you say, well, hold on a minute. Why are these agencies, government agencies, giving permission to these pharmaceutical corporations to give this fake, as they would perceive it, when the trials are negligible? What's happening? And then when you realize about the web, you realize that big pharma go deep enough, attaches to the web. The government protection agencies from big pharma go deep enough, they attach to the web. And you had the web giving permission to the web to give the fake vaccine of the web to younger and younger kids. And there's very serious reasons for why they wanted to do that. And so this secret society web I call the global cult is manipulating events within human society on behalf of this non-human force in this other dimension of reality. And, like I said earlier, you constantly ask the question, if you're really, really interested in the truth. First of all, if you're interested in the truth, all preconceived idea and belief has to go. evidence has to be your guide, not preconceived idea or religious belief or any of it. You just have to let your mind open and go where the information takes you. But because you keep asking, what don't I know? You go deeper and deeper into the web. So once I'd started to establish this global cult situation in the 1990s, early 1990s, mid 1990s, I thought, okay, but when did this start? Because this obviously hasn't been going on for a few years. When did this start? And you go back as best you can, and you can follow it through into the ancient world. And since the ancient world, it's been expanding and expanding its reach until it was now global. Long time.
Can you talk a little bit about that, just for people that don't know about the references in antiquity to this type of intervention and non-human interaction? What was it that stuck out for you from the ancient past that became data points?
Well, the question I had was, observing this, is as you go back into ancient Rome, you go back into Babylon and Egypt, and you see these how these secret societies emerged out of there, and other places. You ask the question, well, hold on a sec. People, this goes back a long way, okay? We can debate how long, but it goes back a long way. And so people have been born, they've played a part in advancing this agenda, which they were never going to see come to fruition in that lifetime. And then they die, and then other people do it, come in, and they do the next, and on it goes. And my question was, well, there has to be some orchestrating force that's overseen all this. And in this same period, this synchronistic period that where I was looking at this, that's when the non-human element started to come into my life synchronistically, with the 12 different people in 15 days in America were telling me the same thing in different cities of their experience. And you don't hear one piece of information and then say, so that's it then. The way I work anyway is I'm looking all the time for patterns. I'm looking for instance, at patterns of agreement. There's lots of things that people disagree on, but when you've got religions and religious texts and the ancient texts in various forms, and there are areas that they all agree on, then that I find extremely compelling and worth pursuing. And one of the things that religions and, if you like, non-religious, cultural, shamanistic streams of knowledge agree on is that human society is manipulated from the unseen, from a force from the unseen. So if you look at the Christian belief system, they talk about Satan or the devil. You look at Islam, they talk about Shaitan. You look at the Gnostic belief system, they talk about Yod-Baoth or the demiurge, their version of Satan, the devil. And they talk about archons, which is a word, a Greek word meaning rulers. That's all that means when people say archons, it means rulers. And the Gnostic writings that were found at a place called Nag Hammadi in Egypt in 1945 in an earthen jar, which appeared to go, maybe more than one earthen jar, that go back, at least it's estimated, to around 400 AD when they were hidden. They talk about this demiurge Yod-Baoth character, consciousness, I would see that as, creating these archons, rulers, to serve its interests. And this, when you look at the Christian version of this, it's Satan created his demons. He runs his host of demons, and in Islamic belief, you have the jinn, and who are the jinn? They are entities in the unseen that are manipulating human society, and you see this common theme everywhere. You know, I talked to shamans and carriers of ancient knowledge through the ages, like a man who became a great friend of mine, Credo Mutwa in South Africa, the Zulu shaman and official historian. And he was telling me, I've spent hours and hours and hours and days and days and days with this guy over a period. And he was telling me the ancient Zulu stories and legends that mirrored what I've just been describing, that there's an unseen force manipulating human society. You go anywhere in the world, you'll find the same. Another interesting thing which I include in a book, where is it? Can't give me a hand there, called The Roadmap, which is just out, is looking at the fact that, you know, we talk about pantheons of gods, like the Greek gods and Zeus and the Egyptian pantheon of gods and the Roman pantheon of gods. But what you find is all over the world, there were these pantheons of gods. And, well, who were these pantheons of gods? Well, of course, they were called different things because there were different languages, different cultures. But the penny drops when you realize that they are the same entities that they're describing. And they were doing sacrificial rituals to them. They were sacrificing people to the gods. And it's something that had happened in my research into this global cult, was that these cultists, often very famous people, number of which I name in the books, they were involved in satanic ritual, are involved in satanic ritual today, and human sacrifice ritual. Came across all this, first of all, in the 1990s. And you hear this, and you're told this by many different sources, a number of which have actually directly experienced it. And you think, obviously, why? What do you think? So and so and so and so and so and so are involved in satanic human sacrifice ritual. What are you talking about? Crazy, man. But then you remember the ancients were doing human sacrifice rituals openly.
The Canaanites.
Openly to the gods, yep. And they were a gift to the gods. And then I obviously asked the question: a gift to the gods. So what do the gods get out of it? What's their gift? And why are they still doing it? And of course, the answer of what is the gift is the reason they're still doing it today in secret, as they were doing it openly in the ancient world. Because one of the things that I've learned over the years is that this simulated reality has been created to hijack human perception, and through this global cult, manipulate human society to generate wars, suffering, deprivation, all these situations and states that generate in humans low vibrational energy. This is a big key to why this world is as it is. This is mainstream science. Every time we think, and every time we we emotionally react. We are giving off an energy. We're giving off frequencies that relate to the nature of the thought and the nature of the emotion. So joy, love, peace, happiness, appreciation, harmony, they are high frequencies. They are high fast frequencies. The frequencies of fear, anxiety, depression, regret, hatred, resentment, conflict, war are low, slow frequencies. Well, it just turns out, because the question obviously that I had was, okay, when I kind of crossed the line, this is a simulation, just after the turn of the millennium. The question was, what the bloody hell? Why would anyone want to do this? Why would they create a simulation to hijack human perception? And then it becomes clearer and clearer that these entities are feeding off low vibrational human energy because they themselves, because of what they do, are in a low vibrational state. So they can only absorb low vibrational energy because that's their frequency, which immediately drops the penny that they have absolutely no interest whatsoever in a world of love, of joy, of harmony, and of appreciation, peace, harmony. None. That's not the energy they want. They want the other type. And so what they have is this network of secret societies constantly manipulating the world towards more and more and more control. Now we're heading towards AI human fusion. Been their goal all along. And also they're manipulating these wars, these conflicts, this deprivation, this conflict, this emotional low vibrational energy, which a guy called Robert Monroe dubbed loosh, this low vibrational energy, loosh. And Robert Monroe is an interesting guy because he was I think he was a radio executive, a media executive. But he had this ability, he wrote many books on it, to project his consciousness into this astral dimension and explore it, experience it. And he said that one of the things he learned in these astral travels, as they're called, was that these entities are feeding off low vibrational human energy. And so in a sacrificial ritual, you have the victim in a state manipulated and built up of extreme levels of terror. And terror is a very, very, very powerful low vibrational energy. And while the ritual is going on and being conducted in this human realm by the Satanists, these entities, some of them anyway, are overseeing the ritual, and they're feeding off that energy of terror that's coming off in the form of frequency from the victim. That's the gift to the gods. And you know, if you look at someone in a state of high emotion, you can see from their body language and their facial expressions that they're in a state of emotion. What you can't see, because it's outside of visible light, are the frequencies coming off them that relate to that emotional and mental state. They are astral frequencies that we're giving off. And they're going into this astral dimension, which these entities are feeding off. And what also happens when in states of terror is a chemical reaction happens in the blood which infuses it with adrenaline. And that's adrenochrome that has been talked about by some conspiracy people over the years, that these elite drink. And I've talked to people who've taken part in these rituals, often against their will. Sometimes they're people who've seen the light and come away from it. And they describe how when these people drink this adrenaline-laced blood at these rituals of the sacrificial victim, they go crazy. It's like an elixir. It's like a drug to them. And this guy Robert Monroe was so skillful at this astral projection, astral traveling, that eventually the US military got involved, their psychological wing, and they set up a study called the Gateway Study.
The Gateway Program, Monroe Institute.
Exactly. And they got other people together who had this ability to astral travel. And they did this study, and it was a classified study, but eventually the CIA declassified it, and it's been circulating ever since, more recently, even more. And they decided in this report by this military guy who was overseeing the Gateway study, they decided reincarnation was real. They decided that the Earth, or our reality, not just the Earth, our reality in all its forms is holographic, which is what I've been saying for a very, very long time, going back even before the millennium. And the people in the Gateway Project experienced in the astral dimension so many reptilian entities that they gave them in the Gateway Project the collective name of the alligators. And what I've been saying over the years is that the focus of this reptilian manipulation, and it's not just reptilian, I mean, it seems to be a dominant form within this Archon astral kind of army. But it's not only reptilian, there's lots of other non-human forms as well. But they call them the alligators because they met so many, they experienced so many of them. And, you know, you therefore have this structure where you have this astral dimension, which is driving the human agenda for more and more control. And towards this AI human fusion, ultimately, and we're not far from that, the way things are going. In fact, it's already happening. And this global cult is operating within the human frequency band, manipulating human society, to produce this loosh, more and more reasons to produce low vibrational energy. I mean, people, you know, they say all the time, oh yeah, the authorities, they're always using fear to get people to do what they want. Yeah, but they're not using fear only to get what they want, but because if you're in a state of fear, you are generating this low vibrational energy, which they're feeding off. I mean, you know, it's like we're their sustenance. And you know, in the Matrix movie, when the Morpheus character held up the battery and said that the Matrix is a computer-generated dream world built to turn humans into one of these. It was a profound truth within an apparently fictional movie. That's basically what is happening. And so at the same time, you've got the generation of events, situations to keep people in a constant state of anxiety and fear and what's happening next and, oh my God, fear of the future, all this stuff. Wars, generating vast amounts of this low vibrational loose energy. I mean, just think of what the First World War created in terms of that, and the Second World War. Think of what's been generated out of Gaza since October the 7th. And also, the process is being constantly driven by this cult on behalf of this non-human force to greater and greater and greater human control. And that's what this AI human fusion is really about. It's about replacing, if there's a few of you, and in terms of the global population of, we're told, 8 billion or more, there are a few that are actually in full knowledge of what they're doing. And if the few are going to control the many, as they always have throughout known human history, then how do they do that? Because mathematically it should be impossible. Well, they do it by getting the target population to fall into belief systems. They don't care what you believe, so long as you believe it rigidly and without question. Because once you have a religious belief or a political ideology, you have put yourself in a perceptual box. Because if you go beyond that box into the infinity of insight, awareness, knowledge that's sitting there waiting for us, then your political ideology or your religious belief is not going to survive that process. So people stay in the box because it keeps them in the belief system. And once you've got your target population broken up into endless different political, religious beliefs that are rigid and unquestioning, then you've got the perfect environment to play them off against each other, to create the essential facet of the few controlling the many, which is divide and rule. You get the many at war with themselves, so they don't stop and realize that the same hands are holding strings to all of them. And so you, at the moment, what do you have in America and indeed the wider world? You have increasingly this intense left-right division where left thinks it's right and right thinks it's right. And you have this divide and rule conflict between them. What does that produce? Low vibrational energy on both sides. And so we're being played in this way all the time. But the other thing you have to do, and what I've described is all part of it, is if you're the few and you're going to control the many, you've got to control the perceptions of the many. And you've got to control the sense of self-identity of the many. So you sell them the idea through orthodox science, for instance, that they're just a cosmic accident, and when you die, the lights go out. Or you sell them the alternative, or the major alternative, which is that they are subject to the whims of some judgmental God. They have to keep happy or else. And you have this situation where you are controlling the perception of the population through those means, and also through the control of information. We form our perceptions from the information we receive, whether it's a personal experience or a 10 o'clock news or a Facebook post. We form our opinions on things, our perceptions, from the information we receive. And from our perception formed that way, that dictates our behavior. So if you want to control the behavior of the target population, you've got to control their perception, and you control their perception by control of information. This is what censorship is all about. Censorship is not a bit of fun. It's making sure that your narrative, designed to make people have the perception that suits you, is all that they basically hear. This is why you had all that censorship during COVID. And so the idea of the AI human fusion is to replace even that, to reach a point where artificial intelligence is connected to the human brain body and becomes the human mind and becomes human emotional response. And you've only got to look to people like Ray Kurzweil, the Google executive, who claims to be the numero uno expert on the whole AI and where it's going. And he said a few years ago that by 2030, and we are in 2026, and it's already happening anyway, that humans would be connected to artificial intelligence, connected to the cloud through artificial intelligence. And from that moment of connection, artificial intelligence will do more and more of human thinking until human thinking is basically negligible. And that's that. And then you've got this guy who's a kind of AI expert for the World Economic Forum, Harari.
Oh yeah, Yuval Harari.
Yeah, and he is saying the same, basically.
Well, he's like a hardline materialist, God is dead because of science type of guy.
Yeah, but you know what people say to justify their opinions is not necessarily what's driving their opinions. Their opinions may be well driven, and in his case, I'm sure it is, from the knowledge of what the game is. And so we're now hurtling towards this human AI fusion in which human thought and emotional response will be dictated by artificial intelligence. In other words, who controls artificial intelligence controls the human mind and human behavior. And that who will be these entities in this other dimension of reality, because it's become clear to me over the years that this simulated reality that we are experiencing, this very, very advanced version of a virtual reality computer game, is run by artificial intelligence, and it's run by artificial intelligence on that is on a scale that makes even human artificial intelligence, as we currently perceive it, to look like the Stone Age.
Well, another thing that kind of relates into that, I suppose, in relationship to kind of like a biosynthetic integration and this idea of the singularity and transhumanism, is the UFO subject and how that started to rise in popularity, and the government's talking about it in America. It was one of the things that started to get me into the public research space, was following the UFO subject. So I've interviewed most of the pilots and the Pentagon spies and spooks and CIA guys and all that kind of stuff, and over the years started to become a lot more distrusting of that narrative that was coming out of the US government, to the point now where I'm pretty adamantly against these guys that have come out and started to engineer a perception about the UFO subject. But I'd be interested to get your position on especially kind of like the new revitalization of UFOs with the US Navy and the Tic Tac and Lou Elizondo and all of these characters. Like, where do you sit on what they're trying to do?
Well, I think if you remember the guy Serge Manas in the 1990s, the Canadian journalist who was talking about Project Bluebeam and a manipulated fake alien invasion that would justify the centralization of global power to meet the threat. I've always kept that in mind over the years, and because I go back a long time, 36 years researching this, and I remember the days when talking about UFO activity or talking about craft that were actually in the underground bases and secret projects, and were not a little bit flown by humans, not non-humans. I remember whenever you were talking about that, and when I was traveling America, talking to nobody in the 1990s, but talking to no one, yes, but I was meeting some incredible people and whistleblowers and what have you, and the government's reaction was ridicule. It was dismissal. It was no, it was a weather balloon or whatever. Oh, it's just crazy, oh, he believes in little green men and all that stuff. And then when this, as you indicate, this switch started to take place where suddenly it became more and more mainstream and much more, in terms of government reaction, more credible, then you start to think, well, what's happening here? And it seems to me, and I'm not dogmatic on this, but it does seem to me that here we have the irony of bloody ironies, that this simulated reality, and I can explain how it bloody works. It's not terribly complex in its foundation. The irony of irony, that this is run by non-human entities. I'll call them interdimensionals rather than extraterrestrials, because they overwhelmingly operate from another dimension. And the whole Project Bluebeam theme is that you then tell people that there's this alien invasion and who are these people and what have you, to frighten the shite out of them, while all along this whole entire reality has been controlled by a non-human force. It would be the ultimate irony, really, and the ultimate kind of play on human perception. Don't tell them that this whole reality is created and generated and driven by a non-human force. Tell them that there's another non-human force. Don't tell them that. Tell them there's another non-human force that is threatening to invade the planet. I mean, and what an irony that would be.
And it's interesting when you actually, because again, this is one of the subjects where I started to get quite quickly connected to people, and at the time I was very interested, and upon reflection, especially getting to know their backgrounds a bit more, a lot of these people who are all buttoned up and bureaucratic in the government talking about UFOs and the Senate Intelligence Committee, and it's all very impressive. So many of them have deep connections into Scientology. Even more worrying is, connections into like the Ordo Templi Orientis. There's a whole esoteric engineering of psychology going on behind the intelligence community front that is pretending to be a UFO disclosure effort. And that's one of the things that I dug into that made me back away and go, okay, hang on, something far deeper is going on here, because all of these guys that people are sitting down and watching on Fox News and CNN who are from the Pentagon, they've got really interesting esoteric connections and backgrounds and beliefs, which is why I think this is another component, like you said, of the social engineering.
Well, you see, the world seems terribly complex, but you can break it down, because behind the complexity, and so much of the complexity is there to hide the simple behind it. Oh, you see these scientists with all these bloody equations on a massive blackboard, and people look at that and go, I don't understand it, mate. I'll leave them to it. No, but actually, behind all those equations is something really simple, and is a simple for you. The basis of control is control of perception. Control of perception comes from control of information. Therefore, if authorities are telling you something, it's in their interest to tell you. Because if it was in their interest not to tell you, they wouldn't be bloody telling you. So authority lies, right? It's what it does. So therefore, instead of when authority says something, accepting it without question, look at it on the basis of authority lies. Therefore, there's a very, very good chance that what they're telling me is not true. So I'm not going to believe it. I'm not going to act upon it. I'm going to look at it myself and see if it stands up or not. And so they wouldn't be releasing this UFO stuff, authority in all its forms, unless it suited them, unless there was a motive that benefited them and benefited this cult. And therefore, you are absolutely right to be deeply skeptical of what's happening, and deeply skeptical of those people that are putting this stuff out. Because, like I say, perception is the basis of everything. And it's not just conscious mind perception, it's also subconscious mind perception thereafter. This is why they put in subliminal things and symbols and all these things there that actually communicate with the subconscious mind. According to psychology, 95% of human behavior is generated from the subconscious, not the conscious mind. The reflex action responses, all these things where the conscious mind is actually not playing a part. The body is reacting to situations, fight or flight. All these things are body programs and subconscious programs. They're not conscious mind programs. And so they're after the subconscious mind, and they're with the occult and the symbols and the surreptitious communications to the subconscious. And they're after the conscious mind, but they get the conscious mind by getting the subconscious mind, because the subconscious programs filter through to the conscious mind, at which point people think they're having their own thoughts and coming to their own opinions, when they're not. It's actually been put into the subconscious. So all these different levels, and it's very, very what you might call scientific. It's very carefully worked out, the best ways of controlling human perception. And they would not be telling us this stuff and making it more and more public with more and more official credibility, unless there was an ulterior motive.
Oh, I completely agree. And for someone who's in the UFO research field, a lot of us are starting to see the kind of tide change in terms of people viewing these spokespersons from the government as credible, because they've actually given away their credibility over the years by proving basically everything that you've just said. And one of the other things I wanted to bring up before we start winding down, one of your recent videos titled Trump, Israel, and the New Third Temple, you've linked Trump's Jerusalem policies to accelerating the construction of the Third Temple of Solomon at the location upon which Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock currently reside. Now, this is something Netanyahu's own government has also voiced a desire towards the rebuilding of Solomon's temple. And for those unaware, it all ties deeply, and I'm sure you can speak more on this, into theological and prophetic elements, both of Jewish scripture and Christian revelation texts, that the construction of the Third Temple of Solomon will usher in the Messianic era, or in the Christian viewpoint, the end of days. So I'd be interested to know more about how you see Trump's actions in the Middle East fitting into your view of the global cult.
Right. Well, the thing is, I said earlier that if you can see people, they're gophers. By the time you get to the level of politicians, they are super gophers. They are here today, gone tomorrow, gophers. They play a part and then they disappear and others take over. The thing is, these are all these different levels you've got here today, gone tomorrow. Someone like Gates or Schwab or Kurzweil and Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and Mark Andreessen and David Sachs, who is the AI crypto czar appointed by Trump. They have longer lifespans because they're at a level where they're gophers, but they're here for longer. The politicians come and go, come and go. So by the time you hit politicians, you're looking at serious gophers. So when you look at the history of Trump, and I have in detail over the years, this is why I was calling out Trump in 2016 when he first ran for president. And I got so much abuse and so much stick from people who were supporting him in the alternative media. I was saying the guy's a bloody fraud. He's owned by Israel. And you look at his background going into childhood. In my new book, the Roadmap, I talk a lot about his background in one particular chapter. And he one of his key mentor was a guy called Roy Cohn. And Roy Cohn was a notorious mafia, Israel-centric, ultra-Zionist lawyer who eventually got struck off just before he died. He should have got struck off a long time before. And so Trump has been around this his entire life. When you run real estate businesses in New York, you need to be in with the mafioso, the Jewish mafia and the Italian mafia, whatever, because they run the whole construction industry, basically. And so he then became according to Epstein himself, the best buddy of Epstein for 10 years, actually probably longer. And Epstein was running this blackmail operation, the trafficking of children to the rich and famous. With I've talked to a number of these women who were young when they were in the Epstein circle, and they all tell you that there was microphones hidden and there were cameras hidden to catch people, right? So it was a blackmail operation. And Trump would have been involved up to his neck. And then suddenly, and it was an operation run by Mossad for Israel and the CIA, because, you go deep enough again, the CIA attaches to the web, Mossad attaches to the web, British intelligence attaches to the web. At that level, they're all on the same team. So anyway, Trump then shocked everybody by running for president, and he gets in. And I was calling him out as soon as he appeared. This guy is a con man, controlled by Israel. So his first presidency gave Israel basically everything it wanted. He moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which was a massive symbolic move. He gave the Golan Heights to Israel, that was Syrian territory, and so on. And then he, what would the Epstein network have on Trump? And as long as Trump serves the cult, it won't come out. Soon as he's expendable, it will. And so he then gets into the presidency this time, and he's gone on even more in an extreme way, giving Israel more and more of what it wants. So he's just a front man. He's just a gopher. All this bombast. He's a frightened little boy, really. Just like Elon Musk is not very bright. These are not geniuses, and they don't play 5D chess. They do what they're bloody told. And if you notice with Trump, whenever he gets resistance that stands up and looks him in the eye and says, no, we're not doing it, he caves. He's a little boy. He's a frightened little boy. He's still trying to please his father, who dominated him. So people like Netanyahu are running the show. I mean, I've in various books, not least one called The Trigger, which exposed massively and in fine detail the 9/11 story, which wasn't 19 Arab hijackers. It was run by Mossad and the CIA and other agencies. Again, fiercely compartmentalized, those levels that were serving the cult. And as a result of what happened on 9/11, of course, the Middle East was turned asunder, exactly what Netanyahu and the Israelis wanted. And the other side of this, because again, it's all about perception. In the roadmap, there's 28 chapters, and I look in 5 chapters at religion. Religion is an absolute foundation of human control. For the reasons I said earlier, once you believe rigidly in a religion and a religious narrative, you're not going to go beyond it. So they got you. They got you in a box immediately.
And you're willing to kill for it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you're willing to justify anything on behalf of that. And like I say, so many people in the so-called alternative media, the central core of it that gets all the algorithmic support and funding, they are religious believers, rigid religious believers.
Yeah.
And therefore, they're not going to, with an open mind, uncover what's going on if it's at odds with their religious belief, which it is. So another thing that I do in the roadmap is I look at these stories. I look at the Old Testament stories. I look at the New Testament stories. I look at the narrative of Islam. And what you find is it's made up. I mean, made up. There's one chapter in which I'm quoting 2 Jewish archaeologists who have absolutely no interest or benefit in trashing the narrative of the Old Testament, but they do, because there is no archaeological evidence for the Old Testament stories. There is no archaeological evidence for the existence of Moses or the Exodus, for instance, on which the whole Jewish story is founded. You have the Egyptian record keepers of the time who kept meticulous and detailed records about really mundane things. And yet there's no mention of Moses or any of it, or plagues of frogs and locusts and all this stuff. The Bible says that on the night of the Exodus, when the Israelites fled the Pharaoh through an open Red Sea, thank you, God, that they numbered 600,000 men. Right. Well, add the children, add the women, and it's estimated you're probably looking at around 2 million people. Then you've got all the possessions, and you've got all the animals that are said to have gone with them. They then spend 40 years going around the desert, actually a very small desert by global standards, and 2 million people. And there are about 42 locations they're supposed to have stopped at and set down at. And as these archaeologists point out, first of all, in arid areas, artifacts are preserved better. But there should be endless bones of people, graves, animal bones, all of it, evidence, archaeological evidence of the location. And then you realize that when at the time the Israelites were supposed to have fled Egypt into the desert, the Sinai desert, that whole area of the Sinai going right up north was controlled by the Egyptians, because archaeological evidence has been found of Egyptian forts over that whole area from that period. So now we're supposed to believe that that Moses and the Israelites fled out of Egypt into a land controlled by Egypt. I mean, it's just crazy stuff. Then Moses is supposed to have handed over to Joshua. No evidence for any of these people, including David and Solomon, by the way, and earlier Abraham. And so Joshua was supposed to have led because God told him the mass slaughter of the Canaanites, etc. And he's supposed to have this famous biblical story of the walls of Jericho falling down when they blew their trumpets or whatever.
Blew on the horns. And brought them down,
and as these archaeologists point out, Jericho had no walls. These cities did not have fortifications in that period. And what you find is that the stories that became the Old Testament were written often massively later, like 1,000 years, 500 years later. And there were certain places that existed at the time they were written that didn't exist in the period that they put their stories in earlier. So you say, right, oh, this happened at this place and this happened at this place. Well,
that place wasn't actually there at that
time. Exactly. And then you look at the New Testament. Now, what I write in the roadmap about the New Testament is quoting many different people who've researched this. Is that there's a form of writing, I think it's called typology. And what that is you write something much, much later, but you write it in a way where it appears to be an outgrowth, a continuation of what's happened earlier with texts that already exist at the time you're writing it. And so we have a Bible with an Old Testament and a New Testament, and with the idea that the New Testament is the outgrowth of the Old Testament, when actually it was written specifically to give that impression. So all these years later, even though the Old Testament stories have no basis in history, they are, or the great majority of them anyway, they are used to be history. And the reason that Israel claims a right to that land is because of what's in the Old Testament. God gave the chosen people the land of milk and honey. And so we're in 2025, 2026 now, and what is happening today is being justified by what is claimed to have happened thousands of years ago, for which there is no evidence whatsoever that any of it ever happened, and loads of evidence that it didn't. But it suits the agenda to maintain that illusion. So you have the story of Solomon's temple, claimed to be where the mosque is now, the Halaska Mosque, and what Jews and Christians call Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Then there was that was trashed, and then there was another temple which the Romans trashed, and now they want to build a new temple because it's all God's given us this land and he wants us to build this third temple. And what they're doing is, it's not, quote, God that is manipulating events to make it appear that biblical prophecy is happening. It's humans who are making it appear that biblical prophecy is happening. And one of the reasons for that, and this all ties into, I go into this in the roadmap, this all ties into the AI agenda as well. But one of the reasons is that if you look at the Jewish population, never mind those that are involved, because the vast majority of Jewish people are just pawns in a game controlled by the few, like everyone else. But if you look at the Jewish population of the world, and if you said to people, "What's the Jewish population of the world?" They would give you an answer based on the prevalence of Jewish information and circulation of news in the public arena. And it would be vastly greater, the number they would think, than the number that is. It's bloody tiny. The vast majority, the vast, overwhelming majority of Jewish people are either in America, where they make up only 2% of the population, or they're in Israel. The numbers after that in different countries absolutely plummet. And so if you're going to impose an agenda, you can't do it alone. You've got to bring other people along. And so what they're doing is fusing the Old Testament with the New Testament because they want the Christians. They want the Christians on board, the biggest religion in the world. They want them on board supporting the Netanyahu Israel, actually controlled by a network connected to the cult I call the Sabbateans. They're not really Jewish. They just claim to be, as another story I go into in great detail in the books. So they're looking to get Christians to believe not in the in the New Testament only, but in the Old Testament, which they do, even though the God of the Old Testament is a bloodthirsty tyrant, and that this prophecy from the Old Testament applies to them because it's a biblical prophecy. And so they're looking for the Christians and what become known as the Christian Zionists,
which there has certainly been a resurgence of.
Massive, to support the Jewish Netanyahu Israeli narrative of bringing the third temple into being. Now, if you had have said,
in fact, you actually had Pete Hegseth actually saying that in an interview of a couple of years back about how the third temple of Solomon should come back.
1917 was a miracle. 1948 was a miracle. 1967 was a miracle. 2017, the declaration of Jerusalem as the capital was a miracle. And there's no reason why the miracle of the reestablishment of the temple on the Temple Mount is not possible.
So, there's clearly that underlying Christian Zionist movement.
Yeah, the whole kind of this Trump cabinet, they're all fiercely pro-Zionist and fiercely pro-Third Temple and this whole idea of the Greater Israel project. Again, the Greater Israel project, which is the plan to expand Israel across Jordan, to encompass the Lebanon, to go into much of Syria, part of Iraq, and the northern period area of Saudi Arabia, and to go across into Egypt to the Nile. This Greater Israel project is all based on an Old Testament claim, not true, read the roadmap, that the greatest extent of the Israeli King David control and empire matches what is now called the Greater Israel. So they want to expand Israel across all those countries to mirror the extent to which they claim King David once ran that empire and controlled that land. And so the Trump cabinet are absolutely on board with all of this. And, you know, if you had said just a few years ago, Jay, that the plan is that they're going to demolish the Alaska Mosque, etc., and everything Islamic upon what they call Temple Mount. And they were going to rebuild Solomon's temple, the Solomon's temple that never existed. Then people would say, that's crazy. It would be a bloody bloodbath, mate. They're never going to get away with that. Well, now have a look. You've got Gaza completely subjugated and about to be completely taken over by these psychopaths like Trump and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and this board of peace, which is all about controlling Gaza and turning it into another aspect, extension of Israel. You've also got the West Bank that is basically being completely taken over. Completely taken over. Where is it coming from? And the one of the reasons they really want to get, or key reason they want Iran to subjugate Iran, is because they want no response, no opposition, no resistance to this Greater Israel project, which includes the building of this temple on Temple Mount. So you can see, if you see what they're doing, you can see the pieces on the chessboard being moved into place. And it's not because they are fulfilling biblical prophecy. Biblical prophecy is a made up nonsense. It's because they're appearing to make biblical prophecy happen so that they'll get, for instance, the mass of the Christians on board in support of what they want. And who controls the Trump regime? The Christian right.
I think a good way for people to understand that from a kind of science fiction perspective is the films or the books Dune and the Bene Gesserit, who were actually borrowed from the Jesuits in real life, the kind of the shakers and movers of prophecy. So if anyone's familiar with those films, it's a very similar thing in terms of manifesting prophetic events into reality through engineering, perception, and outcome. Very true. I won't take up more of your time because I know that we've just gone over the 2 hour mark, but I would like to just quickly highlight your latest book, The Roadmap, Escaping the Maze of Madness. Is this your magnum opus?
Well, I don't speak foreign languages, but the reason I wrote this book is because I could see people waking up to different aspects of what's going on, especially since COVID. It was a big wake-up call for a lot of people.
Yes.
And people wake up to this bit and they say, oh, no, I can see they're manipulating here, or I can see they're manipulating there. And what I wanted to do was produce a book that showed how all those different things that different people are waking up to are absolutely all connected. And it's one massive tapestry, and it's being orchestrated from this other dimension of reality, which interpenetrates this one. And it's interesting that it's when you start to grasp the nature and the breadth and scale of human control, it's then you see the answers. You see the answers to it. Because, you know, people say we need solutions. I don't think we do. I think we need to remove the cause of the bloody problem. I think that's the way we should be addressing this. We should be not seeking a solution that inevitably will at some point need another solution to the solution, but remove the cause of the problem. Because if the cause is gone, the problem must disappear. And what I'm laying out in the roadmap, along with so many other things interconnected, is what the basis of human control really is. And that's the problem, the basis of human control and perceptual control. That's the basis. That's how they do it. The few can't control the many otherwise. And in that exposure, the answers appear. How we bring an end to this bloody nonsense. Because a handful of people, comparatively, cannot control 8 billion unless the handful control the perceptions of the almost entirety of the 8 billion. And, it's a very challenging book in many ways. And it goes into the afterlife, because there's other levels of this simulation as well. And, but there's ways to end this. There really are. But we've got to focus on the problem or the cause to remove the problem. And that's what the book is really all about.
Links will be in the description box below, everyone. So I do encourage you all to, of course, check out this latest book by David. You've been incredibly gracious with your time. You've been researching. Oh, well, I'm glad you had a good time. You know, I want it to be a conversational thing, and I've really enjoyed. I've learned so much listening to you. So thank you so much. And, you've pushed through the kind of resistance and character assassinations from the mainstream that would make a lot of people just give up. But all of that opposition has been countered by millions of people around the world who've paid attention to your work over the years. And as I said at the beginning of the conversation, much of what is popular today, the alternative positions that some of the biggest podcasters and influencers use as a blueprint or as a roadmap, if you will, for navigating the wilderness, originally came from work such as yours, laying the foundations that have helped so many people wake up to a wider reality. And although much of what we've discussed and much of what you've uncovered, it is disturbing, I think you would agree when it comes down to it that regardless of the darkness, none of it really holds a candle to what we truly are as spiritual beings.
Absolutely right. And that's where the answer lies, a reevaluation of our self-identity. We're not human. We're having a brief experience called human, and we call it human because we're having that experience through a body called human. But actually, what we are is consciousness, all consciousness ultimately. And that reevaluation of self-identity, as I talk about in the book, changes everything. And I must say, what you just said, I do chuckle to myself quite often these days when I hear breaking news from the alternative media. Breaking news. And I think that was in my books in the 1990s, mate.
Breaking news? I don't know about that.
Yeah,
it's 2 decades late.
Yeah, it's quite funny. But
yeah. But people haven't forgotten you, David. You're still very much part of the zeitgeist.
Well, I'm going to go on until I eventually, at some point, decide to keel over, because I'm not giving up. And one of the things, Jay, over the years, I've seen people, because I've been doing this for so long, 36 years, I've seen people come into this arena. I've seen them even be flavor of the month for a while. And I've seen them disappear. And I look at it and I think, if you truly have any idea what's happening, you wouldn't be disappearing. You wouldn't say, oh no, it's too tough and I'm going to spend more time with my family. You wouldn't do that, because your family depends, and your kids and your grandkids depend on this being sorted out. So it's difficult for me to imagine that it's possible to have any idea of what's happening and then walk away, because I ain't going to walk away. I am doing this for the duration. No question.